And welcome back. Call this meeting to order. This is meeting number 26 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Canadian Heritage. Pursuant to the order of reference, Tuesday, February 16th, the committee resumes clause-by-clause consideration of Bill C-10, an act to amend the Broadcasting Act and to make related and consequential amendments to other acts. Today's meeting, of course, has taken place in a hybrid format. As you see before us, we're also being webcast for those watching us from, I was going to say around the country, but I suppose you could say just around the world, right? So that being said, very quickly, I want to some of the rules that we put down so far for those of you who are observing this committee. We are going through clause by clause. Each amendment will be signified by letters and numbers. For example, PV, Parti Vert, PV1 would be the first of the Green Party's amendments. We have amendments from the Liberal members on the committee, CPC, from the Conservative members, Bloc Québécois, there will be in BQ and NDP from the New Democrats. And final category would be G, which would be amendments coming forward from the government. Now, before we pick up with that, just a couple rules. Remember, please no taking any photos of this for distribution for this particular meeting. Well, actually, for all the meetings, really. And just to clarify something on the vote, folks, just again, when we vote on an amendment or a clause, I will ask for it to carry. If I hear silence, it carries. If I hear a no, I will go to a recorded vote. If I hear a no and then someone says on division, I will carry it on division, signifying that someone is not in support of it, but we'll go ahead without a recorded vote. Or if you want to carry on or to be negatived on division, just say negative on division or no on division. And I hope that's clear as it was last time. So I just thought I'd repeat that for everyone's benefit. Now, scheduling. Let's get to that for just a moment. As you know, we passed the motion to see if we can seek out extra hours or extra meetings for C10. You've already received the notice. So we proceed, we go ahead, we try to find the space where we can. We found an evening of May 3rd as a placeholder. Just so that you know, we attempted today to go 3 hours, but that was not possible. We know that the Senate is also sitting. We also attempted for next Friday to do 3 hours. That too was unsuccessful. We were only to attain 2 hours because of multimedia services weren't able to cover it. So far, we just have the extra meeting on May 3rd. So I think you received a notice for that. Nevertheless, we can talk about that later if you wish. But I think it's time for C10. We go to clause by clause. We pick up where we left off, and where we left off was, that's NDP 8. NDP 8. So Ms. McPherson, it's your amendment. Would you like the floor?
Certainly, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm happy to speak to it. I think we have discussed the amendment already, so I can provide some arguments. But I think that basically that this is to make sure that the Canadian broadcasting policy is innovative and that it supports the development of Canadian creative talent and reflects Canada's Indigenous and multicultural character while reflecting its communities and regions. You know, there's been enormous loss of community channel archives and closures of studios. And so this is something that we've put forward to combat that to some degree. So if anyone has questions, I'm happy to answer them, but I think we've already discussed the amendment to some degree before we adjourned last time.
Yes, we have, Ms. McPherson, and of course, based on a precedent of the ruling that I did prior, I'm going to have to make the following ruling, which of course is the fact that for any programming to be made available to the public through archival means such as a library or Archives of Canada, outside of that, then unfortunately it goes beyond the scope and the principle of the bill, as it was not covered in the original bill. And for those who are watching from around, of course, when we accept the bill in second reading and we send it to committee, it gives us a broadly narrow, if I can use that term, broadly narrow scope by which that we can operate. We cannot bring in something that is from the outside that is brand new. So therefore, in this particular case, to be consistent with the ruling of the last amendment, I have to rule this way. If you notice, folks, on NDP 8, look at page 45, Number 7, the last one makes reference to that. Therefore, that ties the whole amendment into this. So, Ms. McPherson, of course, and again, that is no reflection on the content or the intent of which you wish to go. So, unfortunately, I have to rule that to be out of order. Okay. Now we go on to CPC 4. CPC 4. Just give me 1 second to get to my notes. And I think Mr. Reyes, am I?
Merci.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As it's described there, I think it's clear. So online undertakings that are not owned by or subsidiaries of undertakings licensed under this Act to provide English language only programming and are subject to an original Canadian programming requirement shall ensure that, as part of that requirement, the proportion of their original French language programming corresponds at a minimum to the proportion of the French-speaking population in Canada. I'm sure Mr. Housefather will adore it.
Ms. de Bruzen.
Thank you. So the intent about making sure we have French representation is something that's come through in a lot of the amendments that we've looked at, and it's great. But tying it to population numbers is not really, I would think, the best way to go. If first of all, that could be a dropping number. It could be it creates a floor, potentially a ceiling for that representation. So I'm not really in favor of quotas, and certainly not tied to population numbers. Do you think that BQ18 seems to do perhaps a bit of a better job at trying to get that representation of French programming? So anyway, that's my thought, is that the quota system is a little bit off.
Monsieur Reyes.
Merci, Monsieur Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would just like to clarify, following Mr. Bruzen's comment, there's no quota, there's no ceiling. To the contrary, superior is the wording used. So it would not be below that level.
Monsieur Champoux, s'il vous plaît.
Mr. Champoux, please. I'll say very frankly that I have a hard time given the undertakings targeted. Mr. Reyes, could you please specify which undertakings you are targeting with this amendment? And secondly, for days we have been trying to avoid talking about ceilings that would be tied to the proportion of francophones in Canada. And there's a good reason for that, because we're looking for a level that is higher than the francophones in Canada. The number is 4%. So first of all, who is this targeting specifically? And would you be open to an amendment if there were a fairer proportion?
Okay, Monsieur Reyes.
Mr. Reyes, please.
Sorry, before you start, don't forget, folks, when you're not speaking, can you please help us out by putting your microphone on mute, please? Thank you. Monsieur Reyes.
Mr. Reyes. Certainly, Mr. Chair, I will be careful about that. So for the first question about the ceiling, I'll repeat it, that it's very clearly indicated that we're talking about a minimum to the proportion of the French-speaking population. So nothing stops it from being higher level. So we're not contradicting anything we've already said. We're just making sure that Canada's francophones are properly served when it comes to French language programming. Now, when it comes to who is targeted, I'm not sure if the clerks or other employees, the researchers here with us might be able to assist me. But it seems clear enough to me. These are online undertakings that are not owned by or subsidiaries of undertakings licensed under this Act. I don't see how it can be worded better than that. There might be different jargon, if someone could assist me.
Seeing no further comments, we now go to a vote. Oh, sorry, I do have comment. Mr. Shampoo.
Mr. Shampoo. Yes, Mr. Reyes was actually asking for someone from the department, and I would appreciate that as well. Would it be possible to ask if someone from the department could comment?
Yes, my apologies. I should have asked you to repeat yourself because my audio went. I apologize. We now go to the department. I'm looking for a show of hands, as we normally do, from someone from the department who wishes to address Mr. Reyes' comments. Mr. Ripley.
Merci pour la question.
Thank you for the question. I might also ask my colleague, Drew Olson, or Mr. Smith to also answer. If we are understanding the essence of the amendment, it seems to be targeting online undertakings that are not the property of undertakings that hold a license under the Act to provide services in English. So, I think that what that indicates to me is that online undertakings are being targeted, and they could be Canadian in some cases, or in other cases, not Canadian. So I believe the intention is to target major streaming services online, except for the ones that would be the property of a Canadian undertaking that holds a license to provide English language services. Mr. Olson, would you have anything to add to that? If I may, Mr. Chair?
Mr. Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Ripley. No, that is correct. That is my interpretation of the amendment as well. So it would be online undertakings that are not licensed to provide purely English language, or online undertakings that are owned or are subsidiaries of undertakings that are not able to, or that are not licensed to provide English language content only. And there are a number of those undertakings in Canada that are licensed to provide English only content. So that is what I believe this amendment would do. Given that French is not my first language, I'm just looking at, is there a difference in the French and the English between the phrase entreprise autorisée and undertakings licensed? Because a license and authorization to broadcast are not exactly the same thing under the Broadcasting Act. So I'm just trying to check that right now, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Are we, all right. Mr. Housefather, you want to proceed while Mr. Olson is, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question also for the department. Je suis très sensible à la proposition de M. Reyes.
I'm very open to Mr. Reyes' proposal because I think it is important regarding the proportion of francophones. But I prefer the block's amendments, which offer more flexibility. I have a question for the department.
Given the different nature of the amendments, as I understand it, this one would require each and every online undertaking that is not licensed to only provide programming in English to provide exactly the same hours of French language programming over the percentage or equal to the percentage of French-speaking people in Canada at any particular time, and would not give flexibility, I guess, to the CRTC to have different rules for different online undertakings depending on their own unique positions. Is that a correct interpretation of this amendment?
I'm assuming it's for Mr. Olson.
For
Mr.
anyone in the
Olson.
department who can answer. Thank you.
Okay, I see Mr. Ripley first, and then I'll go to Mr. Olson.
Thank you for the question, Mr. Housefather. Yes, that is based on what I understand the amendment to be accurate. So what we understand this would do as currently drafted is subject, again, all online undertakings, so all streaming services that aren't owned by a Canadian service who only offers English services. So again, we can imagine, that would capture both non-Canadian services like Netflix, but I think also likely services owned by, say, Bell Media, who has both French and English services. So a service like Crave, they would all be subject to kind of that base minimum obligation, irrespective of, for example, their penetration in the French market or other unique characteristics that they may have. I think Mr. Reyes is certainly correct in stating that this is being framed as a minimum, and indeed it would always be possible to go above that. But that base minimum would indeed apply across the board, regardless of the nature of the service.
Thank you. Before I go to Mr. Olson, folks, I think my audio problem is fixed, but can you hear me? Can you show your thumbs if you can hear me well? Thank you so much for helping me out there. Mr. Olson, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Normally when we discuss authorized to broadcast, it says it's both authorized currently under a license or under an exemption order. And this motion only talks about licensed under this act. So I think there's a slight difference in this. There are undertakings that are programming undertakings that are exempt from the requirement to hold a license from the CRTC now. They're typically some of the smaller undertakings, and they operate under an exemption order under Section 9.
Okay, thank you. Seeing no, Mr. Housefather.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. I'm having a bit of trouble. I have one more question for the department so that I better understand again. Are there Indigenous broadcasters, for example, those that produce only in Indigenous languages, that also have an original Canadian programming requirement, or broadcasters that broadcast in languages other than English? For example, some broadcasts that are coming in Hindi, they wouldn't have an original Canadian programming requirement, I presume. But is there anybody else other than English broadcasters that would have that provide programming in English that would have a requirement to original Canadian programming that would fall under this provision, such as an Indigenous broadcaster?
Oh, two hands at once. How about Mr. Ripley? We go to you first.
Mr. Chair, perhaps I'll pass the mic to Mr. Olson.
Mr. Olson.
Thank you, and thank you for the question, Mr. Housefather. Yes, there are Indigenous broadcasters that have requirements to broadcast in Indigenous languages and or in other languages like English or French. So this amendment, as I read it, would basically say that those types of undertakings, they're not one that is providing English language only. So I believe that the way this is worded is that those undertakings, online undertakings that were owned by Indigenous broadcasters, say, would be subject to the requirement that is proposed in this motion.
Okay. Seeing no further comments, now we go to a vote. Shall CPC 4 carry?
No.
Okay. Madam Clerk, we go to a recorded vote, please.
Yes, sir. Thank you. On CPC 4, Mr. Housefather.
No.
Madame Bessette.
No.
Mr. Bruson.
No.
Ms. Ian.
No.
Mr. Lewis.
No.
Monsieur Reyes.
Oui.
Mr. Aitchison.
Yes.
Mr. Shields.
Yes.
Mr. Waugh. Mr. Waugh. Mr. Wall appears to be frozen. I will come back to him.
Okay, let's go back to Mr. Watt. Please proceed.
Mr. Champoux?
Contre.
Ms. McPherson?
No.
And do we have Mr. Waugh back?
I think Mr. Watt dropped off.
Okay, we'll have to proceed. Madam Clerk?
Thank you, sir. Seven nays, 3 yeas.
Right, I declare the amendment negative. Okay, now we go to G4. It's G4.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Champoux, Mr. Chair, I would just like to clarify one thing before we go further. Mr. Waugh probably was disconnected because of a technical problem, and if we don't wait for him to reconnect, it might have an impact on the current vote because there was a certain margin of difference, but it could make a big difference if the vote were tighter later on throughout the study of this bill. And I think that we should now establish that if someone does get disconnected, we need to wait until the committee member reconnects. I believe it's very important.
Just to respond to that, Mr. Brusen, I'm assuming you want to talk to the amendment and not to what was brought up by Mr. Champoux as a point of order. Is that correct? Yeah, okay. Mr. Champoux, in considering what you just said, I'm going to rule that you're absolutely correct and just say as a point, as an admission, that was a bit insensitive for me to do. And I sincerely apologize to the entire committee. Maybe in the back of my mind, yes, I was thinking about expediency and also the fact that it wouldn't have made much of a difference. And that would be a prejudice of the vote and result. Mr. Champoux, thank you so much for pointing that out. I accept that. And my sincere apologies to Mr. Waugh, who now has joined us. Is he there?
Yes, for some reason I got bumped off, but thank you, Mr. Chair. I will vote yes if you agree to that. But I am sorry I got bumped off, and I did get back on fairly shortly after, but hopefully that won't happen again as I'm working from home.
And I reiterate the same what I said earlier. I will not make that same judgment again. And my sincere apologies. Now we move on to G4. Ms. DeBruzen, I believe you want to talk.
Yes,
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I can just have some clarity, because this goes to Canadian ownership again, which is something that we've dealt with in other amendments. So just as a first question to see if this is something that is still debatable. If it is, I'm happy to do it.
My apologies. The clarity, are you asking the department?
No, you, Mr. Chair, because we've already dealt with amendments on Canadian ownership. So I'm just checking before I launch into, the importance of Canadian ownership, whether this is still debatable.
At first blush, yes, I think this is fine. We can certainly go ahead and debate this as an amendment. So otherwise I would have ruled, but it's still there. You go right ahead. Do you wish to move it? You don't have to move it if you don't wish.
I'd say no. I think we've covered this ground. So thank you.
Okay, so cross off G4. And that brings us to the end of clause 2, which begs the question. Oh, sorry, I see some hands going up. Now, Ms. DeBruzen, I see yours. I'm assuming you're okay. Ms. McPherson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to just ask my colleagues. My understanding is that there had been some conversation around clause 4.1.1. I'm just wondering that there was some interest in having that removed from the government side. Is that still being proposed? And if so, could we see what that amendment would look like?
I'm sorry. Are you 4 within the bill structure itself? You're talking about. Okay. Since you put the question out there, I'll open it up to the floor if someone wants to respond. Ms. DeBruzen, I see your hand up. Go ahead.
just to clarify, this was a question about whether I would be recommending that we vote down 4.1. The answer is yes, that I would be recommending, and that goes to CPC 5, because that would be amending a clause that I would be suggesting that we pull down entirely.
Okay. Moving right along. It now begs the question of finishing the clause. Ready to vote? Shall clause 2 carry?
As amended, Mr. Chair.
No.
No. As amended, sorry. No? Shall clause 2 carry as amended? I hear no. We go to recorded vote. Amy?
Yes, sir. Clause 2,
As amended, yes.
as amended, sir. Mr. Housefather,
Yes.
Madame Bissette,
Oui.
Ms. Bruson,
Yes.
Ms. Ian,
Yes.
Mr. Lewis,
Yes.
Mr. Reyes,
No.
Mr. Aitchison,
No?
Mr. Shields,
No.
Mr. Waugh,
No.
Mr. Champoux,
We.
Ms. McPherson,
Yes.
seven yeas, 4 nays.
I declare the clause carried as amended. So that brings us to clause 3. And now we move to amendment. Sorry, folks, if we could. All right, going to the list here, we're going to CPC 5. CPC 5, and I'm, let me see, I see Mr. Reyes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we're looking to replace line 35 on page 4 with the following: and reception by other users of the service, provided that such programs are uploaded by a user of the social media service that has fewer than 250,000 subscribers in Canada and receives less than $50 million per year in advertising, subscription, usage, or membership revenues in Canada. And this act does not apply in respect of online undertakings that have fewer than 250,000 subscribers in Canada and receive less than $50 million per year in advertising, subscription, usage, or membership revenues in Canada.
Mr. Brusen.
Thank you. So clause 4.1 has created some confusion for people as to whether or not social media is excluded or included. So we recommend actually voting against it, 4.1. And the reason I would be recommending that is that we would be making it clear that social media is included if they're acting like a broadcaster. So 4.1 seems to have caused some confusion. Recommend just getting rid of it altogether so that we don't have that confusion.
Thank you, Mr. Brusen. Seeing no further conversation or debate, we now call for the vote. Shall CPC 5 carry?
No.
Okay, so we have to go to a recorded. Ms. McPherson, I see your hand up.
We have to vote first, or do I just have a quick clarity question for you?
I only paused because I don't know when your hand went up. It was either probably before I put the question or not. I'll give you the benefit of the doubt, but go ahead.
I'm just wondering, so Mr. Brusen I just want to make sure I understand, because of course I'm new to all this, but Mr. Brusen has put forward something that we would be taking the entire 4.1.1 out, and yet we are now voting on whether we would accept one of the changes to 4.1.1. What are we voting on here? Are we voting to remove it, or are we voting to amend it?
Mr. Brusen.
The problem is that we have this amendment before us, which is amending the part that we're proposing that when it gets called, we would vote against the 4.1. So I'm voting against the amendment because it's amending a piece that I'm going to be voting not to be part of the bill as a whole. I hope that clarifies it a bit. It's just that you don't want to be amending something that you're ultimately going to vote out in its entirety.
Mr. Shampoo.
Dans le même ordre d'idée, je comprends.
Along the same line of thinking, I understand what Ms. DeBrusen is explaining, but at what point in the process are we going to vote to remove 4.1 in its entirety? Isn't it easier for that to be the sub-amendment or an amendment to what has been proposed? When are we going to vote to take it all out?
Ms. DeBrusen.
I wonder if that's a question actually that I can put to the clerk or the the chair, as because it seems to me that that's more of a process question as to chicken and egg which comes first.
Okay, I can confer with the clerk shortly, but I'll hear from Mr. Housefather first.
Yeah, I just wanted to perhaps answer. I mean, the amendment to a clause comes first. So we would deal with any amendments to a clause, and then we would vote on the clause. So if you wanted to defeat 4.1, you would vote against the clause when it came up to a vote after the amendments on the clause were dealt with. So we have to deal with this amendment first because it's on the clause, and whether it wins or loses, in the end, then the next vote will be, does the clause carry, whether as amended or not as amended? Hopefully that answers the question. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it might. But in the meantime, just for some added exposure to this, I'm going to ask our legislative clerk, Philippe, to if Philippe is there.
Yes,
sound check.
Yes,
Mr.
Mr. Chair.
Philippe, you have the floor. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Housefather is quite right. There is just another solution possible, would be the withdrawal of CPC 5 from Mr. Reyes. But aside from that, since the vote has been called, the committee can vote on CPC 5, and regardless of the outcome of the vote, when the chair will call clause 3, if it's the will of the committee to remove clause 4.1, the new 4.1 in the bill, it would just vote against shall clause 3 carry.
Yeah, although one thing I want to point out, Philippe, is that, I didn't call for the vote on CPC 5. I went back to Ms. McPherson because she, again, as I said, I think she had her hand up before I called for the vote. I don't know if that changes. Anyway, Mr. Waugh, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Could I get this was one of the main things that I brought up during testimony, where we are seeing a lot of non-broadcasters going on Facebook and so on. And even now YouTube, as Major League Baseball yesterday offered a game between Houston Astros on YouTube. Could I get a ruling from the department on this, as we are seeing more and more, well, actually former broadcasters going on Facebook, and this, I think this is a very important CPC 5. There's a very important amendment I see going forth with this Broadcasting Act.
Okay, so yes, we're still in the CPC 5. I'm going to go to Mr. Ripley.
Thank you for the question, Mr. Wow. So indeed, my understanding of the effect of CPC 5 would essentially be, so right now, as Bill C-10 currently stands, as the committee is aware, it excludes social media services from the ambit of the Act. Unless there's a situation of an affiliation contract or a mandatory relationship in place. CPC 5, if it was adopted, if I understand correctly, the spirit of the amendment would impose certain limitations on that, to the effect that if a social media service crossed a certain threshold in terms of the users of the service, the subscribers in Canada, et cetera, then suddenly it would get pulled into the ambit of the Act and would be subject to the Act like any other broadcasters. In other words, the social media exclusion would not apply to them. If I understand correctly, the debate that's currently taking place is Ms. DeBrusen has signaled the government intends to repeal or suggest the repeal of 4.1 altogether, meaning that there would no longer be any exclusion for social media services at all. And just maybe for the benefit of the committee, in our previous sessions, the committee upheld the exclusion for individual users of social media companies. In other words, when you or I upload something to YouTube or some other sharing service, we will not be considered broadcasters for the purposes of the Act. In other words, the CRTC couldn't call us before them, and we couldn't be subject to CRTC hearings and whatnot. But if the exclusion here is removed, if 4.1 is struck down, the programming that we upload onto YouTube, that programming that we place on that service would be subject to regulation moving forward, but would be the responsibility of YouTube or whatever the sharing service is, right? So that programming that is uploaded could be subject to things like discoverability requirements or certain obligations like that. So again, if the way forward ultimately is to maintain the exclusion for individual users, but to strike down the exclusion for social media companies, that means that all the programming that is on those services would be subject to the Act, regardless of whether it's put there by an affiliate or a mandatory of the company. I hope that helps clarify.
Thank you, Mr. Ripley. Seeing we had two things going parallel of each other regarding process and content, I hope everyone is clear on both. I don't have to go back to it. We thank you for your input. So let's see no further discussion. We go to a vote. We now get to should CPC 5 carry?
No.
I hear a no. Madam Clerk, recorded vote, please.
Thank you, sir. On CPC 5, Mr. Housefather.
No.
Madame Bissette.
No.
Mr. Bruson.
No.
Ms. Ian.
No.
Mr. Lewis.
No.
Monsieur Reyes.
Wait.
Mr. Aitchison.
Yes.
Mr. Shields.
Yes.
Mr. Wall.
Yes.
Monsieur Champoux.
No.
Ms. McPherson.
No.
Seven nays, 4 yeas.
I declare the amendment negative. And that being the only one that was put forward for that particular clause, we now go to clause 3 and a vote. Question, shall clause 3 carry? Oh,
No.
it happened.
No.
No? Okay, so Madam Clerk, we go to a vote.
I don't know if I saw any yeses to having it go forward. I'm wondering if we can negative on division if there was anybody who was supporting.
Okay. So the proposal negative on oh, sorry, I lost my audio there. Sorry, Mr. Brusen, could you repeat what you just said? Because I had some scrambled audio again.
I was just proposing that we negative on division.
For the clause.
Yes.
Okay. Everyone know what's going on? I see comprehension all around the board. We have negative on division. I declare clause negative. Okay, folks, we're off to clause 4.
Sorry.
Sorry, we're now going to
I
Ms. DeBruzen.
I actually realized we weren't voting on 4.1 there.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
One moment, please, folks. I'm just going to, well, before I go to, I'm going to have to suspend for a little bit to talk to our clerk. But before I do, Mr. Housefather, would
I was just going to point out, Mr. Chair, that Section 3 of the bill is 4.1.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. I just had a second where I had a moment of wrong one. Okay, thank you.
Yes, thank you for the clarification. I didn't have the bill in front of me, which is what I was looking for, and I apologize. So I would otherwise I would have made the ruling. Thank you, Mr. Housefather, for that. Appreciate it. So we're moving on, as mentioned earlier. We're now going on to Clause 4. We're going to start with G5. Mr. Housefather, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. This amendment is simply to modify 5.2a to add words at the end to make 5.2a consistent with what this committee has already done in earlier parts of the bill. So basically, on va utiliser les mots.
We will be using wording we have already used. For example, minority context of French and Indigenous languages in North America, and the particular needs of interests of official language minority communities. So this is just to be in alignment with what we have already used in other clauses of the Act. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, any further discussion? Seeing none for G5, we now call for a vote. Shall G5 carry? I declare the amendment carried.
Okay.
Mr. Reyes, could you go on mute, please? Sorry. We now go to, this now brings us to PV 16. And for those of you wondering, PV, it's Parti Vert, it's our Green Party proposed amendment. Now, before we go to Mr. Manley, just note, if PV 16 is adopted, NDP 9 cannot be moved as they are identical. If PV 16 is negative, so is PV 9 for the same reason, follows the same logic. Also, if PV 16 is adopted, BQ 12 and G6 cannot be moved due to a line conflict, meaning that for those of you just joining us, that means BQ 12 and G6 would be amending something that no longer exists because it has been amended. I hope that makes sense. Nevertheless, we're back to PV 6. Mr. Manley. 16, sorry.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. The bill adds that the broadcasting system should be regulated in a flexible manner that is fair and equitable between undertakings that provide services of similar nature, taking size variations into account. But services of similar nature is too vague. It would result in the CRTC, the Commission, grouping together services that are different enough to warrant different regulation. This amendment replaces the paragraph so that regulations should take into account the nature and diversity of services. It takes into account their size, but also their impact on the Canadian creative and production ecosystem. And the organizations that supported this were the Coalition for the Diversity of Cultural Expression. So I hope the members of the committee will support this amendment. Thank you.
Mr. Shampoo.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Look, I have nothing against the Green Party's amendment, but our amendment is much more thorough, has more detail, and so I would propose for us to reject the Green Party amendment and move right on to BQ 12.
Mr. Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Not to take sides here, but you know what? The good news is we all agree in principle. And I'm looking at this NDP block, Green government. Everyone's on the same side here. So after looking at the bill, I would have to say personally that I do support the blocks bill as well. So just can we support that one? Would that, even though that came after, can we? What would the technical thing that I would have to do to say that I support the block bill, and then we can talk about that further, or maybe ask for the. Go ahead,
Mr. Lewis. We have to deal with this one first. Once we dispense with this, then we can move on to the to the next one. Mr. Manley.
Yeah, I just want to note that the block motion, PV24 covers the things in the block motion that are missing in this motion because I divided out the amendments because I divided out the amendments to different parts of the bill. So we're going to hit on that amendment later on, which we'll pick up on the BQ12.
Right, and thank you, Mr. Manley. Mr. Lewis, sorry, I didn't mean to be dismissive from the beginning. I hope it wasn't perceived that way because let me just clarify that beyond PV16, the next one will be BQ12. I should have added that just for clarification. Seeing no further conversation, no further debates, we now go to PV16 for a vote. Shall PV16 carry?
No.
No.
I hear no. Madam Clerk?
Can we just
Sure.
negativize this? I mean, if it has to, I
Okay.
believe the party, the Green Party doesn't even have a vote on
Okay.
this, and I haven't seen a yes.
Are you asking for a no on division, Mr. Brusen?
Sure, just to make it go faster. Yes,
Okay.
please.
Negative on division? So done. Negatived on division, PV16. Okay, now we go to BQ12. If BQ12 is adopted, G6 cannot be moved due to a line conflict. Just reiterating what was mentioned earlier.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Oh, sorry, Philippe, which means I've done something wrong. Go ahead.
No, no, sorry. Since PV16 was defeated, so would be NDP 9 as a consequence because they are identical.
Oh, sorry, I should have mentioned that. Yes, I already did it. In my own mind, I said that. But apparently that's not for everyone else, is it? That's just for me. My apologies. The NDP 9, yes, has been negatived as well. Thank you, Philippe. Good catch. Okay, so now we're off back to BQ12. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Did I see Mr. Shampoo? Okay, go ahead.
Désolé, j'avais.
I'm sorry, I hadn't raised my hand, Mr. Chair. But in the same line of thinking, BQ12 proposes the following. So for lines 8 to 12 on page 5, so 8.1 takes into the account and the nature and diversity of the services provided by broadcasting undertakings as well as their size, impact on the Canadian creation and production industry, and any other characteristic that may be relevant in the circumstances. And we would add point A, point 2, requires any broadcasting undertaking that cannot make maximum use and in no case less than predominant use of Canadian creative and other resources in the creation and presentation of programming to contribute to these Canadian resources in an equivalent manner. So the objective is if online undertakings are not able for X or Y reason to contribute to Canadian resources, they will have to contribute to the broadcasting system in Canada in another equitable way, which will be determined by the CRTC. And that's what it is.
Ms. McPherson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just wondering whether or not Mr. Shampoo would be willing to accept a sub-amendment that I'd like to propose. I'm wondering if now is the time you'd like me to do that, or if you'd like to go to Mr. Lewis first.
Well, if you're proposing, it's entirely up to you, ma'am. You can either propose a sub amendment or wait and put yourself back in line again. Would you like to hear from Mr. Lewis first?
Maybe I will.
Okay, Mr. Lewis.
Spirit of fairness, I was going to propose a sub-amendment myself, so just a small word change. So I don't know where that puts us, Mr. Chair.
Well, that puts us between the two. The
so
two
very
of you.
Polite, all of
so since Ms. McPherson, Mr. Lewis, if I get the gist of what you're saying, you're going to put back to Ms. McPherson for the sub-amendment.
Sure.
Okay, Ms. McPherson, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the sub-amendment I'd like to propose is after production in A1, so after the Canadian creation and production industry and their contribution, I would like to add, and their contribution to the implementation of Canadian broadcasting policy objectives. And just to ensure that Canadian resources are used as much as possible for Canadian programs.
Ms. McPherson, do we have this in writing?
I can mail that or email that to the clerk quite quickly if that's useful.
Yes, please. If you could do
I'm
that.
doing it
As you do that, when you're finished with that, would you like to comment further on your sub amendment? Or
no, I can rest at that point.
okay. Do I see any debate or conversation regarding? Now we're on Ms. McPherson's sub amendment. I see Mr. Housefather. Go ahead.
I was just going to ask if Ms. McPherson could read it out again slowly so that we could hear it and also understand whether she was proposing to strike the words at the end of the clause as well, or that was supposed to be interspersed before the last words of the clause, because I didn't quite understand.
Okay, normally I go to Ms. McPherson. Have you had a chance to email that yet? I'd like for you to do that first before you answer Mr. Housefather's question.
I have not. I am doing that as fast as I can.
Okay, that's okay. That's all right. You know what? If you want some time, I can introduce the members of our department. I seem to use that as a placeholder when we're looking for time. That's actually no reflection on the people who come to us from the Department of Canadian Heritage. I certainly. I want to welcome Thomas Owen Ripley, Director General, Broadcast, Copyright and Creative Marketplace. Drew Olson, Senior Director, Marketplace and Legislative Policy. Kathy Choi, who is the Manager, Industrial and Social Policy, Broadcast, Copyright and Creative Marketplace Branch. Patrick Smith from Senior Analyst, Marketplace and Legislative Policy. Ms. Choi, I wasn't trying to discredit your actual title. It's a long one. So please don't accept it as such. Back to you, Ms. McPherson.
So I have sent it off to the clerk. I hope I sent that to the right email. So I will read the entire. Would you like me to read the entire clause or just what I'm recommending?
Go ahead. You read the clause, please.
Okay. A.1 takes into account the nature and diversity of the services provided by broadcasting undertakings, as well as their size, their impact on the Canadian creation and production industry, and their contribution to the implementation of Canadian broadcasting policy objectives, and any other characteristic that may be relevant in the circumstances.
I'll let that sink in for a bit. I don't want to, folks, I don't want to race on without full comprehension of what's being proposed. There's very important stuff, which is why it'd be great if you could email a sub amendment in advance. It'd be okay. If you can't, no, I understand. I mean, that's our rules as well. You can do it from the floor. Appreciate that also. But I'm looking around to see if we have a comprehension or a request for a copy. I can proceed. Mr. Brusen.
I'm sorry. I just because I'm trying to process what all of that was. I don't know if the department has it, like has that wording. If they can share their thoughts on what the impact is of this sub amendment.
Okay, Mr. Brusen, I'm looking for a volunteer, Mr. Ripley.
Thank you, Mr. Brusen. If I understand it correctly, the amendment, the sub amendment by Ms. McPherson would have the impact of, as part of regulatory policy, the system should be regulated in a way that takes into account the nature and diversity of the services provided by broadcast undertakings. So it's asking the CRTC to look at the nature and diversity of the services provided by broadcast undertakings, as well as their size, their impact on the Canadian creation and production industry, and then as well as their contribution, i.e. the contribution of broadcasting undertakings to the implementation of the Canadian broadcasting policy objectives. So the impact of that is one of the factors that the CRTC would consider in looking at the nature and diversity of the services provided by broadcasting undertakings, is their impact in essentially giving effect to the policy objectives of the Act.
Thank you, Mr. Ripley. Just trying to gauge the comfort level of comprehension once more amongst all of our colleagues here. Shall I proceed with a vote on the sub-amendment by Ms. McPherson? Seeing no question, no further conversation, we now go to the vote. Shall the sub-amendment of BQ 12 by Ms. McPherson carry? Very well then, carried. We now go back to the main motion, BQ 12, put forward by Mr. Champoux. I see Mr. Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Got a computer sticking here. I have a sub-amendment that I would like to propose, and there, okay, got it back. It is just one word, a change of one word. It would
Okay.
be in A.2, and to save everyone time, I'd read the last 2 lines. Programming to contribute to these Canadian resources in an instead of equivalent, I would like to change that to equitable matter.
Okay. Well, folks, I think that's pretty straightforward. Instead of the word, go to 8.2, last line, instead of equivalent, he's asking to sub-amend it to say equitable. Mr. Shields.
Thank you. Whether it's equitable or equivalent, could we have the staff respond to how this would be evaluated? As it's CRTC then that would have to evaluate equitable?
Mr. Ripley.
Yes, Mr. Shields. Thank you for the question. And yes, it would be left up to the CRTC to determine what whether it's equivalent manner or equitable manner, what that means in practice. That said, there is a difference between equivalent and equitable in the sense that equivalent really means like for like. And one of the challenges that Bill C-10 seeks to address is the greater diversity of broadcasting services that we all subscribe to now. And so one of the challenges the CRTC will have moving forward is that, you know, it's got to think about our traditional TV channels like Global or CTV or TVA, and now it's got to think about online sports streaming services or online third language broadcasting services. And Bill C-10 seeks to establish a framework whereby we want all those services to contribute to the policy objectives of the Act, but it starts from a premise that how they do so may not exactly look the same, right? Depending on the nature of the service, the CRTC could say, well, that service may need to spend a certain amount of money each year on Canadian programming. That other service, given the nature of the service, you know, maybe it's more appropriate that it contribute to cultural production funds like Canada Media Fund. If the term equivalent manner is used, it suggests that notwithstanding that a sports streaming service looks very different than, say, TVA or CTV, that they should contribute in exactly the same way. My view is that equitable manner seeks to send the message that they should make the, you know, a contribution that is of equal importance in terms of contributing to cultural policy objectives, but understanding that how they go about making that contribution may look different at the end of the day.
Thank you, Mr. Ripley. Mr. Shields, your hand is still up. Would you like to respond? Do you have anything else to add?
No, that's good. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shields. Seeing no further conversation, we're now going to go to a vote. And just as a reminder, this is the sub-amendment by Mr. Lewis, the sub-amendment regarding BQ 12. Shall the sub-amendment carry? And so carried. All right. Once again, we go back to BQ 12 on the main motion as amended. Is that a plural? Anyway, let's go to the see no further conversation. We go to a vote now on the main motion by Mr. Champoux. This is on BQ 12. Shall BQ 12 carry? And
No.
so carried.
As amended.
Is amended. Yes, my apologies. As
No.
amended? No. Okay, Madam
Can-
Clerk, vote please.
Can we have it carry on division?
I am asking to carry this on division. Seeing no pushback from that, it will be carried as amended on division. And of course, that being done, BQ12 is adopted. You notice next it's G6, but G6 cannot be moved due to a line conflict. So G6 is out. Now, according to our schedule, we are off to Lib 5. Lib 5. And I see, did I see Mr. Housefather? You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I see that great minds think alike, because Lib 5 is essentially identical in a lot of respects to Bloc Québécois 13, PV 17, CPC 6. And so it looks like almost all the parties had the same idea, which is that we want to facilitate the provision of Canadian programs created in both official languages, including those created and produced by official language minority communities, as well as in Indigenous languages to Canadians. The only difference between Lib 5 and the others is that I've added including those created and produced by official language minority communities, because we've included earlier in the Act the reference that we want to encourage programming in both languages, including from those communities. So I would hope that we have unanimous support on this, because I think it, again, is equivalent to what we said before. And it's an idea that I think all parties heard expressed from many, many witnesses. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Housefather, and it was substantially covered by Mr. Housefather. It bears repeating from a technical perspective. If Lib 5 is adopted, BQ 13, PV 17, and CPC 6 become moot, as they contain, of course, the same provisions as Lib 5, as was just pointed out. Any further conversation on Lib 5? Seeing none, we are going to proceed to the vote. Shall Lib 5 carry? So carried. And if you go to your schedule, folks, I ask that you take out BQ 13. Please take out PV 17. And please take out CPC 6. Okay, we now go on to NDP 10. And before we do, just a note, if NDP 10 is adopted, CPC 7 and BQ 14 cannot be moved due to line conflicts. Ms. McPherson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the purpose of this amendment is to ensure that the CRTC's supervisory and regulatory duties are not relaxed to the point of creating regulatory loopholes on the basis that a company does not make a significant contribution to Canadian broadcasting policy. The later condition is not clearly defined, and for this reason, we're proposing that this provision of the bill be deleted, as it may constitute a regulatory loophole that could be used by broadcasting undertakings to circumvent their potential obligations, which would also constitute unfair competition to undertakings that are subject to the Act.
Madame Bissette.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to clarify something with people from the department. What would the effects of that change be on small broadcasters? Would that add obstacles for them?
Looking at Mr. Ripley, go ahead, please.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Ms. Bissette, for the question. So yes, certainly. Bill C10 includes that provision because, as the committee knows, a new category was just created, a new category of broadcasters, online undertakings, which targets very numerous companies, and the definition includes companies that are in the business of providing audio and audiovisual services. So it is possible that moving forward, a large number of companies and undertakings would be encompassed by that definition.
Recognizing that C10 is enlarging the responsibilities, enlarging the scope of the Act and the responsibilities of the CRTC, this provision of the bill was included to signal that the default stance of the CRTC should not be to regulate every small little online undertaking that's in the business of offering audio or audiovisual services to Canadians, but rather, the goal here is to capture those services that are in a position to make a material contribution to the policy objectives of the Act. In the current conventional world, there's a finite number of services that are offered either over the air or on cable or satellite, and so there was a very closed environment. We're very mindful that in C10, what we're doing is enlarging the CRT's responsibility to include internet undertakings, and the government's view on that is, there should be a judgment call that's made about when those services are subject to, the regulatory requirements that come with Bill C10. And so that's why this provision is included in C10.
Madame Bessette, did you want to talk again, or your hand is still up?
I'm good,
Nope.
thank you.
Okay, Ms. McPherson.
Just that I wanted to follow through that this is not actually intended to make it harder for smaller players, but because that's not been defined, but it's actually to create the loophole, to prevent the loophole that is created for the bigger players, I think.
Okay. Seeing no further conversation, we now go to a vote. Shall NDP 10 carry?
No.
No. Hearing no, we go to a vote. Madam Clerk.
We negative on division.
Sorry, I apologize. Sorry, Madam Clerk. There's been a proposal to negative on division. Hearing no pushback, we will negative NDP 10 on division. Now, CPC 7. Monsieur Reyes.
Merci, Monsieur.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, recognizes that market forces, competition, and the growing choice of programming made available over the internet are contributing to achieving the broadcasting policy objectives set out in subsection 3.1. Encourages all forms of competition to ensure the high quality and innovative programming is made available to Canadians using the most effective technologies available at a reasonable cost. And K, ensures that regulation is necessary, efficient, and proportionate to its purpose. That's all.
Okay. Do we have any further conversation? Ms. Ian.
Thanks so much, Mr. Chair. For me, it's really about keeping the spotlight on the cultural aspect of this. When it's all said and done, the Broadcasting Act should really be a cultural piece and not an economic one. It's not necessarily the point that if a company brings profitability to this, that they're upholding culture. And I think that culture is important here.
Okay. Seeing no further conversation or debate, we now go to a vote. Shall CPC 7 carry?
No.
Okay. Hearing no, we'll go to a recorded vote. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, sir. CPC 7. Mr. Housefather.
No.
Madame Bissette.
No.
Ms. DeBruson.
No.
Ms. Ian.
No.
Mr. Lewis.
No.
Monsieur Reyes.
Oui.
Mr. Aitchison,
Yes.
Mr. Shields,
Yes.
Mr. Waugh,
Yes.
Mr. Shampoo,
Contre.
Ms. McPherson,
No.
7 nays, 4 yeas. Mr. Chair, 7 nays, 4 yeas.
I was on mute. I declare the amendment negative. Okay, that now brings us to BQ 14. Mr. Shampoo.
Monsieur le Président,
Mr. Chair, following discussions with various people, I would like to propose to withdraw this amendment.
That's all right, Mr. Shampoo. It hasn't been moved yet, so it'll be deemed as not being moved. That brings us to Lib 6 on page 61. Mr. Housefather.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And I want to start by congratulating all of the parties on the work we've already done to bolster both official languages under the Act and whether minority language communities, whether French across Canada, Indigenous languages. And this amendment is one that speaks of a right of consultation. We heard from many of the participants from official language minority communities that decisions of the CRTC had very negative impacts on them, and they were never consulted on those decisions. Donc, quand on a un devoir
So when we have a duty to support the development of official language minority communities, if there are decisions by the CRTC that are likely to have an effect of prejudice, I would like to introduce a right of an extra right to these communities, because in the past, CRTC decisions have had extremely adverse impacts on these communities. And I think this would be a positive step forward. And it should not only be used here, but we should also consider this idea in reforming the Official Languages Act this year. So once again, I greatly appreciate the cooperation of all my colleagues, which we've been enjoying to date on OLMCs and minority languages in Canada, and I hope this amendment will also enjoy support. Thank you.
Mr. Shampoo.
Monsieur le Président,
Mr. Chair, I find that the idea behind this amendment is extremely laudable. However, when it comes to feasibility, I feel like we're getting into something extremely complicated. First, taking time to consult is very positive, but there are already bodies in place to conduct that. And adding an obligation to consult OLMCs, well, first of all, I'm not sure who the official representatives of those communities are, and I feel like we're adding something for the commission that will complicate their work. I would like to ask the opinion of our professionals from the department to clarify how this could be implemented without giving the commission too heavy a burden afterwards. Mr. Ripley?
Mr. Ripley.
Merci, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Perhaps I can begin, and then my colleague Kathy might have something to add afterwards. So if I understood the amendment well, or rather, let me give you some observations about the amendment. First, as you know, the CRTC is a federal institution, so the CRTC is already subject to the Official Languages Act and has a number of obligations under that act for engagement, consultation during these processes. So if I understand Mr. Housefather's proposal, it would be adding certain consultation duties and engagement duties into the Broadcasting Act. If it is carried, moving forward, the CRTC will have certain duties under the Official Languages Act and certain obligations under the processes of the Broadcasting Act. So it is possible that there will be a harmony between those two sets of duties, but there might also be an imbalance. So that is my observation on this point. Kathy, would you like to add anything, if that's all right, Mr. Chair?
Oui, merci.
Yes, thank you. Yes, I would say that, first of all, in part 5.1, there is a term introduced, necessary measures, les mesures nécessaires. And I'm noticing that that is a term that does not exist in the Official Languages Act. The OLA instead mentions positive measures. And therefore, I am concerned that this motion could create a conflict between the two sets of duties for the CRTC under the two acts, because
necessary measures doesn't appear in the Official Languages Act that also applies to the CRTC. There may be a conflict in terms of what the level of requirement would be for that organization. I would also point out that for the Official Languages Act is currently being modernized, and there are proposals underway to clarify in regulation how consultations should occur. And so I do worry that if we are prescriptive about what the CRTC should do in terms of consultation, that might be problematic and might enter into conflict with future regulations that are put in place.
Mr. Shields.
It's interesting. I've heard some interesting words here. When we talk about consultation, I don't think we're talking about prescriptive. I'm just saying they should listen to somebody. So I don't find this prescriptive. And I don't know where the unbalance is by having people listen to people with legislation that might affect them. So unless somebody can suggest to me how this is prescriptive by asking them to listen to people, doesn't say how they consult. It just says you should do some consulting with people. And I have a hard time finding that as very prescriptive or unbalanced. Unless somebody can clarify to me that, because I'm not there.
Ms. McPherson.
I believe Ms. Zhu actually was going to respond if I could hear from her first.
I'm sorry. Did you refer to Ms. Choi? Is that what you said?
Sorry, Ms. Choi. Sorry.
Yeah, Ms. Choi. Go ahead, please.
Sure. Thank you for the question. You're right. The requirement to consult is a very noble and honorable one, and one that as public servants and as the government we should be taking on board. The concern here is that this motion, as I understand it, would require the CRTC to consult on every regulation that it puts forward. The CRTC puts forward a lot of regulations, and regardless of whether or not the regulation would apply to OLMCs, or have any kind of impact on the official language minority community, the CRTC and this with this amendment would be required to consult those communities. So that's part of the prescriptiveness here. I would also point out that there are a few terms here that could be kind of subjective. So, for instance, what does it mean to be meaningfully consider? What does it mean to openly consult? Those may there are some nuances here that are not spelled out.
Mr. Chair, just a follow-up
One
question.
second, Mr. Shields. Yeah, I'm going to get you to follow up, and I have to go to Mr. Housefather first.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Look, I mean, I think what Mr. Shields said is correct. This is not prescriptive. This is a requirement to consult. If there are certain sections of the way this is worded that cause issues because of inconsistency that have been pointed out, I'm perfectly prepared to support amendments to remove those. For example, in paragraph 1, what I understand is the words I've added shall take the necessary measures to enhance the vitality of official language minorities communities cause a problem because the take the necessary measures to changes the original wording. The commission shall, from the Official Languages Act, requiring them to enhance the vitality of official language minority communities. So we could just remove the words take the necessary measures to, if somebody wanted to amend that, and just say the commission shall enhance the vitality of official language minority communities and support and assist in their development. And in the second paragraph, I understand the concerns about the broadness about making this apply to when making regulations under the Act. And I think it would be totally fair to amend the next section 521 to say the commission shall consult with official language minority communities when making decisions that would adversely affect them and remove the words when making regulations under the Act. So it would only apply that there was a duty to consult when the CRTC was making a decision that could adversely affect the minority communities. And perhaps somebody who's allowed to do that, like Ms. McPherson, who I see is coming up next, could perhaps propose that as an amendment to this, and I'd totally be prepared to accept that. But I do think it is fair to ask for a duty to consult when we know that there's been prejudice caused in the past, and there's no reason that we shouldn't take steps in the Broadcasting Act to inspire those that are amending the Official Languages Act to make the same type of duties to consult. So I understand the need for some amendments. I will accept them, and happily so. But I think that with those amendments, this should be accepted. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Now, before I go to Ms. McPherson, because I see I'm just trying to follow the dots here of this conversation. It seems to me maybe we should go to Mr. Shields for a clarification before we go to Ms. McPherson. And Mr. Housefather mentioned amendments. I think he meant sub amendments. So over to Mr. Shields.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If Ms. McPherson wants to make those sub amendments, if that'd be great. If she doesn't, I will.
I see. Ms. McPherson.
Well, I'm happy to have either myself or Martin do it, but I have them right in front of me. So can I propose the following sub amendments?
Madam, that is entirely up to you. The floor is yours.
I just always want to sound like I'm being very cooperative, Chair. That's all. So
Duly noted.
Thank you. I also would like to just take a moment to apologize to Ms. Troy. I'm sorry I got your name incorrect. I've got too many things that I'm trying to follow at one time. So I would propose that in 5.1 that we have in regulating and supervising the Canadian broadcasting system and exercising its powers under this act, the Commission enhance the vitality of official language minority communities and support and assist their development. And then in 5.2.1, I would suggest that we amend to be the Commission shall consult with official language minority communities when making decisions that could adversely affect them. And those would be my sub-amendments.
And the second one, you're replacing the word regulations and then going straight to adversely affect them. All right, got that. rather than go through a longer period of time in deliberation, may I ask Ms. McPherson, so that everyone is clear, could you repeat that again slowly? Because I don't think there's enough here that we can have to email it and so on and so forth. But if you could do that again, that would be great.
5.1, in regulating and supervising the Canadian broadcasting system and exercising its powers under this act, the Commission shall enhance the vitality of official language minority communities and support and assist their development. 5.2.1, the Commission shall consult with official language minority communities when making decisions that could adversely affect them.
Okay, colleagues. Are there any points of clarification before we go to a discussion? Again, I'm trying to avoid having a longer process. Maybe I'm defeating the purpose with my own words, but nevertheless, is everyone clear on the amendments that are both in 5.1 and 5.2.1? Mr. Lewis.
Quick technical question, Mr. Chair. Then one vote would cover both of those, 5.1 and 5.2.
Yes, yes, she is looking to sub-amend. There's one vote on the sub-amendment, which regarding both of those changes. So yes, there's one sub-amendment vote. Then we go back to the main motion, whether it's amended or not. I'm seeing no further discussions. I am taking this as full comprehension of what was proposed. All right. Okay. So let's go to a vote. Shall the sub-amendment from Ms. McPherson carry? Seeing no dissension, so carried. We now go back to the main motion. And again, just if you're keeping track on 61, this is lib 6. This is the motion from the amendment from Mr. Housefather. Go to a vote. Shall the amendment as sub-amended carry? And it is so carried. Dare I sound biased for just a moment, but good discussion, folks. That's what lawmaking is all about. Okay, we now, well, that concludes clause 3. So we now call for clause 4. Sorry, Mr. Reyes, go ahead. You have.
Merci, monsieur.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was waiting because I thought it would go much more quickly, but I think we should all. I would like for us to take a health break, perhaps.
Je suis désolé qu'on soit en distance.
I'm sorry for that. I'm asking for it later in the meeting, but I didn't want to interrupt.
Yeah, and I should apologize as well, Mr. Reyes. I forgot to mention off the top, if you want a health break, please request it. Otherwise, I'm just going to go through. Mr. Reyes want a health break, so let's do that. Please come back within the 5 minutes, and we now call for a suspension. Sorry.
After the vote, Mr. Chair.
Do it after the vote? Okay, let's do that. After the vote. So after clause 4, let's proceed to that first. Okay. Shall everybody ready for the votes? Okay.
Avec dissidence, s'il vous plaît.
On division, please.
Was I too slow? Okay, let's go ahead. Shall clause 4 carry? On division, Mr. Reyes? Oh, wait. Okay. Clause 4 carried as amended on division. And now, without further ado, your health break. Please be back within 5 minutes. Suspension. once again, we're doing clause by clause on Bill C10. I won't get into the details about all this. If you've been following along, you know how this works. We're going to go right into clause 4.1. Okay. And I see the first one up is one moment, some G7 put forward by Ms. DeBruzen. Ms. DeBruzen, are you with us?
Mr. Chair, I'm taking this for Mr. Brusen.
Oh, I see. Okay, Ms. Ian, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, no problem. No problem at all. Yes, a new clause, and that is because, Mr. Chair, we live in a new world, and it is a digital one. And so this clause is adding apps. Right now, the CRTC can regulate conventional channels. This would make sure that apps are regulated as well. So things like Crave and other apps, for instance. This clause is also about discoverability. And for more on that, I'd like to go to the department just for further clarification on why that's important.
Okay. Do I see any volunteers from the department? Mr. Ripley.
Apologies, Mr. Chair, but could we have a little bit clarity of what motion is under discussion currently?
Okay, so right now we're under, if you have the pack G7, which is on page 63 of the package. I don't know if you have that or not.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I believe there is there may be a bit of a disconnect then in terms of Ms. Ian's statements and the government motion 7. Government motion 7 is intended to clarify that policy direction that can be issued by the governor and council to the CRTC would include giving direction of general application with respect to orders issued under 9.1 or regulations issued under 11.1. There seemed to be some confusion among stakeholders following the tabling of Bill C10, whether it would be appropriate for the government to give an indication about the way that those powers should be used. So the government motion 7, Mr. Chair, is intended to clarify that the scope of that, as long as it still remains at a level of general application, we're not talking about specific interfering in specific decisions, but rather, for example, that the expectation is that the CRTC ensures certain kinds of discoverability or certain kinds of contributions from certain types of players, that would be appropriate. So I apologize if I've missed something, Mr. Chair, but my understanding is that's what's intended by G7.
Okay, Ms. Ian, I see your hand up.
Yes, my apologies, Mr. Chair, and thank you to Mr. Ripley for clarifying. I skipped to G8. So I went and waxed on poetically about G8 and not 7, my mistake. And thanks for the clarification, Mr. Ripley.
All right. So is everybody clear on that? We're still on G7. Seeing no further conversation. Oh, sorry, I hear someone, but I don't. Oh, Ms. DeBruzen, go ahead. Ms. DeBruzen, I think your mic boom is above. There you go.
Sorry, thank you for that. I was just sipping on some tea. Sorry about that. I think that we need to sub-amend this to put it into past tense. And so I have to pull up the wording to see exactly how that looks, but that would be the proposed sub-amendment.
All right, so do you want to take some time with that wording right now? I can give you a minute. Okay, I'm going to be pretty strict though. So you got a minute. Okay, because I have to call, I may have a typo here in my annotated notes, so I may have to call Philippe to clarify something anyway. Nevertheless, Mr. Housefather, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I just moved to sub-amend the amendment to change the words making of orders to orders made. So basically, under 7.1, at the end of the second sentence, it says making of orders, and we propose to change that to orders made.
Making of orders to orders made.
Yeah.
All right. I think that's quite straightforward, everyone, don't you think? That would be G7. Instead of making of orders on the second line into the third line, we're going to say orders made in 7.1. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we now go to a vote. This is a vote on the sub-amendment from Mr. Housefather that you have just heard. Shall the sub-amendment to G7 carry?
No.
Hearing no, we go to a vote.
Yes, sir. The vote on the...
Yes, go ahead, Amy.
Sorry, sir. The vote on the sub-amendment by Mr. Housefather on, G7. Mr. Housefather.
Yes.
Madame Bissette.
Oui.
Mr. Bruson.
Oui.
Ms. Ian.
Yes.
Mr. Lewis.
Yes.
Monsieur Reyes.
No.
Mr. Aitchison.
No.
Mr. Shields.
Oh.
Mr. Waugh. Seeing your thumb pointing down as a no.
No. No.
Mr. Champoux.
En faveur.
Ms. McPherson.
Yes.
7 yeas, 4 nays.
I declare the sub-amendment carried. Now we go back to the main motion, to G7 as amended. Do I see any further conversation or debate? Mr. Housefather. No, you're on mute, sir. Sorry.
Mr. Chairman, great excuses. When previously making the other amendment, a sub-amendment, I realized that I was inconsistent in not making the same amendment to the words or the making of regulations. It really should be or regulations made, and I erred in now creating an inconsistency in the clause. So my request would be to sub-amend the making of regulations to say regulations made in the past tense. And again, I apologize for not doing this at once in one sub-amendment. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
That's quite all right, sir. As before we go to the vote, we now have a sub-amendment, further sub-amendment. Sorry, can I get everyone to go on? Thank you. So further sub-amendment. I don't think we do anything formal. I can repeat from here. As Mr. Housefather pointed out, given the last sub-amendment that was accepted, this is another sub-amendment to say instead of the second last line, instead of making of regulations, it should say regulations made. Does everyone understand that? Okay, seeing full comprehension, or at least almost. No conversation, debate, no. We now go to a vote. So this is now, okay, sub-amendment from Mr. Housefather regarding sub-amending G7. Shall the sub-amendment carry?
No.
Hearing no, we go to a vote.
Mr. Chairman, can we say it's carried on division?
Can we say it's carried on division? So done, carried on division. Now we return to G7, the main amendment as amended from Ms. DeBruzen. Again, just a reminder, that's on page 63 of your package, G7. Do I see any further discussion? Seeing none, we now go to a vote. Shall Amendment G7 carry?
No.
Hearing no. We go to a vote. We go to a vote. Madam Chair, or sorry, Madam Clerk.
Vote on G7, the amendment G7. Mr. Housefather.
Yes.
Madame Bissette.
Oui.
Mr. Bruson. Mr. Bruson. Mr. Bruson, is that a yes or a no?
Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Ian?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. Reyes?
No.
Mr. Aitchison?
No.
Mr. Shields?
No.
Mr. Waugh?
No.
Mr. Champoux?
Oui.
Ms. McPherson?
Yes.
The motion, the amendment as amended, 7 yeas and 4 nays.
I declare the amendment carried. Folks, I beg your patience. If you could just give me 30 seconds to contact Philippe, and I will be back with you in a very short order. One moment. Thank you, folks. Sorry, thank you for your patience. You've been so kind to me. So now let's move on from G7 as we've just adopted. The next question, of course, by that we carry the clause of 4.1. We now go, as you see, shall clause 5, where there's no amendments being proposed, which begs the question, shall clause 5 carry? We go for a vote. Shall clause 5 carry? Hearing silence, I declare clause 5 carried. That brings us to clause 6. All right, we now go to the first in clause 6. We'll deal with PV 18. Just as a note, if PV 18 is adopted, then BQ 15N cannot be moved to line conflict. And I hope you've all received the newer version of BQ 15. It is now titled as BQ 15N. If PV 18 is adopted, that will be taken out. So PV 18, let's go to Mr. Manley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The bill replaces 7-year license terms with terms that are indefinite or fixed by the CRTC. This amendment maintains the current 7-year maximum license term. It enables the CRTC to amend a license on its own initiative without needing application from the licensee. And a term setting the duration of a license is necessary to ensure predictability of conditions for all players in the system. This amendment has been supported by the Coalition for the Diversity of Cultural Expression, the Société des Auteurs de Radio, Télévision et Cinéma, and the Forum for Research and Policy in Communications. So I hope the committee members will support this amendment. Thank you.
Mr. Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was hoping I could get some clarification from the department. My understanding is that this amendment would actually return to the licensing the 7-year licensing system that we were actually trying to get away from. As mentioned before, more and more of these companies are online undertakings. So can the can the department comment on that about how that would affect? Maybe Mr. Ripley's got his hand up already. Thank you.
Mr. Ripley, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the question, Mr. Lewis. So what Bill C-10 seeks to do is a shift. So as the committee is aware right now, the majority of services are subject to licenses where they have conditions baked into those licenses. So as part of the permission to operate, a TVA channel or a CTV channel, those services are required to contribute to the cultural policy objectives of the Act. What C10 does is it moves away from those cultural policy contributions being part of the actual license, the technical permission to operate and use a spectrum or to operate your cable or satellite service. And what it does is it equips the CRTC to issue orders and regulations that will prescribe those contributions. And the intention there is so that online undertakings and conventional services are being treated in the same way, in the sense of they're subject to the same kind of instrument in terms of the things that outline those obligations. What that means in practice is the license moving forward would simply be nothing more than the authorization to run that service over, again, a particular band of spectrum or whatnot. And it's for that reason that Bill C-10 proposes moving away from the 7-year term. The 7-year term used to be important because, it was an opportunity, again, for the CRTC to revisit the contributions that a service might have to make to supporting Canadian programming or French language programming, or showcasing Canadian content, but that's no longer the case. And so the government's view is that it doesn't make sense to force the CRTC to revisit a license every 7 years because it's not necessarily it's not going to be in question about whether CTV Toronto can continue to operate and use that band of spectrum. If ever there do need to be changes in terms of spectrum allocation and the authorization to operate, the CRTC has the ability to revoke a license or look at a license or amend a license if it needs to. I hope that helps clarify.
Mr. Champoux.
J'en profite.
I would like to take advantage of this opportunity to perhaps get into the following amendment, BQ 15, that not only proposes the 7-year period, but also a record for online undertakings. I don't want to get into the debate right away, but while we're talking with Mr. Ripley, he just made those comments. Could he also explain how the CRTC will ensure that this will be enforced if there is no category for all broadcasting online broadcasting undertakings? How can license be attributed? How can the conditions be enforced?
Mr. Ripley.
Merci pour la.
Thank you for the question, Mr. Champoux. And yes, I have 2 observations. First, currently, if someone is not respecting their obligation to contribute to the system, the CRTC has the power to withdraw, revoke the license. We know that in the current context, just having that power to revoke the license or not is not very nuanced and does not go far enough when certain entities are not respecting the Act. So this would give more power to the CRTC to enforce the AMPs, the administrative monetary penalties. So if ever an undertaking is not respecting their contribution duties, the CRTC could inflict an AMP. Now, when it comes to the registry system, or undertakings rather, would have to register with the CRTC. So this has been established in the bill that the CRTC can oblige undertakings to register with the CRTC.
Oh, sorry, there we go. Thank you. Before I go to Mr. Shields, I just want to let everyone give notice that this will be the last one we'll deal with today, as we're now closing in on that magic time where we have to cease. So, Mr. Shields.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I appreciate the department's discussion of this particular piece. So the understanding is there's just a renewal process of a specific spectrum. But let's get back to the idea of the license that they may have had during that 7 years. Are there times now that you can tell us that the CRTC would revoke a license rather than waiting for the 7-year automatic review of a license? So are they using that power now where they have revoked it? And on what basis would that have been brought to them to consider it?
Mr. Ripley. Oh, sorry, Mr. Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Shields, for the question. The CRTC rarely revokes a license. It would do it for reasons of non-compliance. The most recent one that I remember was was not that long ago in a radio station near Montreal. CJMS Saint Constant had the license revoked following a public hearing, and it was over repeated instances of non-compliance. The Commission also revoked some licenses for Aboriginal Voices Radio when it felt over a period of over a decade that there'd been repeated non-compliance. So the Commission has in the past used that power, but it has been used fairly sparingly. Most licenses are renewed.
Okay. Any further conversation on PV 18? Mr. Waugh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. During our testimony of the CRTC, the chairman, Mr. Scott, mentioned he'd like to go to the Treasury Board to get more money if this bill does pass, as they're going to need more resources. I am concerned with the extra workload on the CRTC, and I can see why they do not want a 7-year window for license renewal. But at the same time, I have witnessed in my 40 plus years of broadcasting, many stations coast to coast violate almost year 2 or year 3 into the agreement certain conditions of their broadcasting license. And so I am a little concerned with this. I just want to point that out. The CRTC does not follow up, in my estimation, once they do stamp the license of the station. Very rarely do they ever follow up and see if that station is actually going by the guidelines of their broadcasting license.
Do we have any further conversation on proposed amendment PV 18 as moved? Mr. Manley.
Yeah, I just want to second what Mr. Waugh has said, because the review process is when you have to document everything for the CRTC and actually prove that you've done what the license requires you to do. Otherwise, you're in a complaint-driven process where complaints might be heard or may not be heard, but there is no comprehensive review of whether broadcasters are actually following through on what they said they would do.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Manley. Seeing anyone else for debate or conversation? Seeing no one, we're now going to proceed to a vote. Shall amendment PV 18 carry?
No.
No.
Hearing no, do we go to a vote?
Can we negative on division?
It's been proposed that we negative on division. Okay, all agreed. I declare PV 18 negatived on division. And that brings us to a conclusion for today. I know you're sad, but nevertheless, don't be sad. We'll be all back again on Monday. all fresh to go at it again. And when we do, incidentally, we will be doing BQ15N. N is, of course, signifies it's a newer version of BQ15. So BQ15N is what you're looking for, what we will start with. Now, seeing no other conversations, anyone want a parting remark? Okay.
Have a good weekend.
Ladies and gentlemen, indeed.
Have a good weekend.
Bon fin de semaine.
Bonne fin de semaine.
Bon fin de semaine.
Au revoir.